Hi everyone, I am Yasmin Fehmi and welcome to another 10 Newark Creators, the series on Instagram Live where we are interviewing Newark-based artists, entrepreneurs, health workers about their craft and how they are adapting to the pandemic. And today I am joined by Diana Candelejo, who's a Newark-based artist and social justice advocate. Right now. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Yasmin, and hi, NJ Pack family.
How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great. I have to adjust my camera here because I just got my head chopped off. So just to start, how was your day? What made you smile today?
Day was good, very productive. What made me smile today was actually staring at my finished piece while doing Zoom calls. So I'll give you folks a sneak peek. There he is. It's actually a commission artwork of Colin Kaepernick. And so I've been looking at that while doing Zoom calls. So it's been very inspiring and has made me smile today.
That's awesome. It looks like quite a large piece. How long did that take you to work on?
A couple of weeks. It's hard to juggle when you have a full-time 9 to 5 and then you sort of do this Batman job at night.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So you're an artist, and I think there's probably a lot of folks from Newark who are familiar with you, but for those who aren't, can you tell us a little bit about your roots? Your parents are from Ecuador, you were born in France, but you grew up in Newark. Talk to me about your journey and how that's kind of informed your art and who you are today.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, being an immigrant and having an immigrant journey is quite the treat. My mother first moved to France in search of economic opportunity, but migrated to the US when I was about almost 4 years old. And she's been in Newark ever since. So she has assimilated here in the city. And, being an immigrant, I just remember, granted, I was only 4, but I do remember already speaking French and attending, the Newark public schools here. And while I was in ESL classes, there was no teacher that could translate or help me, from French to understand English and let alone learn English. So a lot of the community in the East Ward was Portuguese speaking. So there was a lot of, assistance for Portuguese and Spanish speaking, but not for French. So I carry that, when I think about immigrant issues to some of the challenges that we have to face when we move to a country like the US.
Yeah, yeah, that's hard. It's an adjustment and you sort of, you hold a lot of different identities and that I think that can be challenging, in terms of
Yeah.
navigating new spaces. Um, so talk to me about then how you came to your creative practice and how you learned that you love art and want to be an artist and became, interested in painting and things like that. How did that start?
Sure. Um, so not to talk any bad about my parents, but when you come from an immigrant family, being an artist is not an option. So unfortunately, I didn't have that type of support. But I just love the arts from a very young age. Matter of fact, I remember in elementary school selling artwork, selling drawings for like 5 cents. Whether it was Care Bears or Precious Moments, and charging when they were color drawings an additional 10 cents. And so, as a little entrepreneur, I knew I loved art, crafted my portfolio to get into arts high school. So a lot of independence on my own and discovering that I really wanted to pursue, the arts.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. So I don't, nobody knows this, but I'm Egyptian, and my parents are both Egyptian immigrants, and it was like the same exact story. Like, you could do anything, but you can't do that.
Exactly. They're like, we came across the ocean for you to be an artist, the misconception of a starving artist.
Yeah,
So yeah, they were not for it.
yeah. Um, So how is that process of you work full time during the day? Do you want to talk a little bit about your professional career and then how you balance that with art?
Sure. So I'm an economist by training, and actually a lot of the work is that I focus on at RWJ Barnabas Health is promoting economic development, and so leveraging the health system, the hospitals, to buy locally from small businesses and diverse businesses to ensure that we are hiring from those communities wherever we have a hospital.
Hmm.
And so a lot of my work, actually, the way I see the synergies is during my 9 to 5, I see all the research, the data, and the statistics that essentially showcase, these disparities, whether they're economic, health, and all these inequities. And then I translate that into my artwork. And so it manifests in a creative way, the things that I can't immediately change. But yeah, my work definitely informs a lot of my artwork because a lot of it is addressing those social injustices and different disparities.
Which social issues are closest to your heart and do you consider the most important to work on now?
Yeah, so I think, again, as an economist, the racial wealth gap really strikes me and hits home. So economic injustice. There are certainly a lot of immigrant issues and policies. As an immigrant myself and having an immigrant family, it is also very close, near and dear to my heart. But honestly, just when you live when you live in a community that has been again faced with a lot of systemic barriers, it's kind of hard not to see everything systemically, whether that's education, economics, immigration. All the socioeconomic factors really play in, and quite frankly, are all important. So,
Talk to me about earlier this year when the pandemic started. What was kind of your thinking about your work and your creative practice? And did you have to change either of those things or the way that you engaged with those things through the summer?
so yes and yes. Actually, when when the pandemic hit and the full lockdown happened, I didn't have any canvas at home. And
Oh
I
no.
typically paint really, really large, like 4 to 6 feet. And so I did have a lot of sketchbooks. And so what I started doing was drawings, illustrations, but more importantly, I actually started doing digital art, which I had never done before.
Hmm.
So digital illustrations became like my new medium during quarantine. And then, with not only the pandemic, so the public health issue was a crisis in itself, but also with the national unrest, I started utilizing my artwork to promote, elevate, amplify, the different Black Lives Matters issues and injustices, to help spread the word, utilizing again the arts as a mechanism for that.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the constant thread in all these interviews is like, well, I took the situation and I just did what I could. Because it was really tricky for everyone, especially in March and April. Um, so talk to me about the arts in Newark. Why do you think Newark is such a unique place to be an artist and why do you think people gravitate toward it?
Sure. So I think Newark has a lot of assets in the community. Whether it's the enclaves of like the artists themselves. I was very fortunate to go to Arts High School, a magnet school dedicated to the arts, and so that certainly helps create a pool of artists, both known and a lot of them are in the underground unknown, but I still remember the very talented folks here. So there's a lot of sense of also community here. I think this city has gone through so much, and a lot of change. And so I think naturally we just have this tendency of being a resilient, stick together as a community and help one another, as people. Yeah.
Yeah. And are there folks that you kind of worked with in Arts High or met at Arts High that you still work with to this day? Or are there folks that we would recognize in the community that you've partnered with? And what were those collaborations like?
Sure. So actually, I recently collaborated not too long ago with Brick City Jam. And so they're an arts group that was actually working on a series of project where they go to different wards across Newark and identify artists, not just visual artists, but spoken word musician. And so I actually did a little video with them where I'm painting and we have Euphony who was singing and doing and sharing her poems. So that was a nice treat because I hadn't seen actually some of my peers in a very long time, but I definitely remember, having art classes with them. And so it was very refreshing. And again, this is what I mean by like, there's just so much going on in terms of the arts community in Newark, which is just, it's great and refreshing.
Yeah, it's really vibrant. Are there folks who you've kind of, been like stalking online that you want to collaborate with or that you could see yourself collaborating with one day? And could you talk to us about them? Or it's kind of a trick question.
Sure. No, so I think I have actually a very different perspective on this. And to answer you directly, it would be with the anchor institutions in the city of Newark. And so, being that I'm in a 9 to 5, I don't really have the luxury of doing a lot of collaborations or residencies. My time is very limited in terms of being in the arts community and space. Mm-hmm. But I think artists are overlooked in the corporate setting. I think we've been historically, right? The storytellers, we are the documentarians. I mean, there's just so much that artists can offer, even strategists. We just don't think of them in that way in terms of documenting a lot of the work that these anchor institutions are doing. I think that would be an opportunity for the arts community to get involved and plugged in some capacity. It hasn't been done yet, but I'm hopeful that it will happen. And we just need, as I say, artists, RBG was the one that said we need women in all places where we have decisions are being made. I think the same thing about artists. They should be at the table where decisions are being made. And so that's a plug for all the corporations or anchor institutions that want to work with artists. I think they should be given that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Newark is, better than most, I would say. I think the direction is we're going in the right direction. But yeah, so let's talk about projects. So you finished this was a commission piece, the one that's behind you. For anyone who's joining later, do you want to show it again really quickly?
Sure. So sneak peek at a Colin Kaepernick piece I just finished. Again, a commission piece. I do this more often than not where folks see my work and, they want something custom. Actually, during quarantine, I had also a longtime friend from middle school who was getting married and she saw my work and wanted even a bridal jacket. And I had never thought about that, but I was like, hey, I'm in quarantine. I'm stuck here. I'll work on something. So I learned that I can paint on garments, on jackets now too.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's very innovative. And I think I'm getting married next year. That might be a good idea. I hadn't thought
There you
about
go.
it. So you work I guess you work with acrylics for painting and then you work digitally as well. Are there other mediums that you're interested in exploring?
So I think I'm still doing the digital space, but I definitely want to explore that a little more, to see, as I said, I just started during COVID doing that, utilizing that medium. I think the reason why I use acrylic is because I get frustrated with oil painting. It takes too long, even though it does have like a nice finishing look. And so the acrylic is just helpful for me, again, with my time constraint to work faster. But in the future, I would definitely like to potentially start a mural, do some public artworks. Mm-hmm. It would make it easier because since I paint so large, I don't have to like keep it or store it until I get sold. So I think public art would be sort of the next step I go towards.
So have you done murals before? Or that would be a totally new foray?
That would be a totally new thing for me, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I think Newark's murals are really some of like the most beautiful and really something that the city is well known for. So, I mean, I think you're in the right place for it.
Yes.
It's just a matter of the opportunity presenting itself. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about, I'm going to jump back a little bit because I don't think we really talked about your undergraduate years or college years. So you studied economics and you sort of apply that at work. Is there any overlap between understanding data and numbers and visualizing information for people in your creative practice? Like, what does that overlap look like? I wonder.
Yeah, I think, numbers are sometimes intimidating. The reality can be intimidating that these disparities exist. And so I think, visually the arts and just my paintings in general are a little easier to digest. And while it may not be a number, at least it will get someone to think about sort of the issue at play. And to me, whatever starts that conversation or that thought, to activate, someone to take action or better understand or just be curious, quite frankly, about what it is the artist is trying to convey in terms of a social justice issue, to me is powerful.
Yeah, yeah. That's visualizing data, I think, is a big entry point for people who, maybe never took a statistics class or like don't have the time to really read research in depth. And so
Yeah.
it's easy. It makes it more accessible.
And I should add, while I did study, economics at Drew University here in Madison, New Jersey, not too far from here, I was also actually a double major. So I had a double major in economics and fine arts and a minor in French. And so I was very busy. But with the art major, I actually ended up going to Florence, Italy, and was able to study some Renaissance art there
Oh, wow.
for a semester. So yeah, so the arts have always been intertwined into my economic endeavors.
What do you lean toward? Do you prefer that kind of like classic art making where you're just in the studio and you're doing, like studies all day? Or do you prefer something that's more, I don't know, impromptu, abstract, like unconventional?
I think the latter, but I think I did the whole like hours of painting the human body in Italy. It was just not it for me. It doesn't it doesn't allow you to be creative, quite honestly, because it's like you
Yeah.
have to replicate the human body the way it is. And so I know I was always being singled out. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just, yeah, 6, 8 hours of drawing someone, I've had enough. But yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both elements. I don't want to say either or, but definitely not strictly Renaissance perfecting of the human body. So yeah.
Is there a favorite project that you can think back on and be like, yes, that was the perfect process and I love the outcome and I would love to do it again? Uh,
That's funny. So, yeah, I guess going back to Italy, actually, they, gave us like some free leeway to pick a series to work on a final project. And once again, I had the socioeconomic issues top of mind, and I noticed that there was a lot of homeless women in Florence. And so a lot of them outside of the churches, quite frankly, and I wanted to capture that. And I remember going with, friends and asking if it was okay that we photograph them. And some of them didn't take it lightly. Some of them wanted money. And so it was just an interesting experience, to say the least. But I think it's very telling of, as an artist, where my work has progressed and the issues that were still, even back in the day, close to me. Like, why did it matter that I have, to capture that of all things in Italy, right? And everybody else came with like, again, marble statues, and yeah, they were
mhm.
paying the David, and here I was like, okay, I want to paint whoever is disenfranchised, and I want to know more about their story. So
Yeah, yeah. It's a big responsibility, I think, when you want to serve as the storyteller for people whose stories usually go untold.
mhm,
And it's a challenge also to make sure that you're telling it well and that you're representing.
exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, so what is what are some projects in like the dream world where you have more time somehow or you're able to get a more flexible work schedule? What are some projects that you've kind of like had in the back of your mind that you haven't like quite pulled the trigger on yet?
Sure. So I think for me, I've been brewing on this idea of having like a social justice coloring book. The reason being, I have so many, drawings I don't even post that I just have laying around, especially during quarantine. So I'm thinking that would be a cool endeavor. I just haven't, again, sat down to like reach out to publishers or really pitch it.
Hmm.
But it's an idea that's there. Hopefully, folks would be interested in that. I haven't seen that. I've seen, coloring books for everything from flowers to cats, but I haven't necessarily seen something that addresses some of the social injustices and different issues at play.
Yeah, so that'd be geared toward adults, adult coloring book. I know
Yeah,
that's a big industry now.
yeah, exactly.
I love that. Um, so we're kind of nearing our time to wrap up. Do you want to talk a little bit about RWJ Barnabas and the work that you're doing there? Is there any projects you want to plug that people should
Sure.
be
I
looking
mean,
out for?
so yeah, I mean, I'm the biggest, Newark advocate. So I always say, for folks that are interested in collaborating, or if you're a small business, quite frankly, under my role, I'm always trying to find opportunities to encourage the utilization of Newark-based businesses. Again, because we have a hospital, Newark Beth Israel Medical Center,
Hmm.
for different services and products. Also, local hires. Again, I'm a beneficiary of that program as an anchor institution, being intentional about hiring from the community. That's the way I got in the door, because I was a Newark resident. And so I think, whether it's job opportunity, whether it's businesses that need to be served, I am here to help. As I said, I'm the biggest Newark ambassador, advocate, social justice warrior. Just, DM me on Instagram or visit my website. I'd be more than happy to help.
Can you give examples if I'm a small business owner that's based in Newark, what kind of collaborations are available to me? What options do I
Yeah. So right now, obviously with COVID, it's a little tricky. Certainly some of our demands have changed, but I'll give you an example. If we're hosting events, whether you're a food vendor and we're looking for catering, that's an opportunity. Whether we're hosting a conference and need space, we're looking, for different venues. In terms of the arts, that's where I kind of want to infuse and find an opportunity for artists where they can
have?
contribute to that storytelling and narrative. Um, so I would think those are some, areas of opportunity that come top of mind, but I'm sure there are others.
Yeah, so get your proposals in. Diana's available.
Yes.
Um, so talk to me about as a young artist, because I'm sure there are artists tuning in who are kind of looking to folks who are in the series and thinking like, how do I get to that place in my creative practice? How do I like cultivate my voice? How do I, put myself out there? What would you say to anyone who's watching who's in that place?
Yeah, I think definitely be out there. Like you have to produce the content. I think the one thing I've learned through COVID is that because I didn't have distractions, I was able to produce a lot more work, and so folks started to notice me even more. Although I've been here, I'm like I've been drawing, I've been painting, but again with the time constraints, kind of tough. But I think the more you're able to generate content, join different opportunities. I was part of the NIFA Immigrant Artist Group where I met other folks in the community that are also artists. So just taking some of those leaps, to join, whether it's a mentorship, a residency, if you do have the time, and plugging into some of the arts organizations here, I would definitely recommend that.
We just got a question. I'm going to show this on the screen because I've never done this before. How could I draw flowers like you? So talented.
Oh, thank you. I feel
When
like, you
you,
know what, maybe I'll start doing like online tutorials or, yeah. I think the tricky part for me is always, and I haven't perfected this, and this is because I think art schools need to do in general a better job at teaching us how to be entrepreneurial and monetizing our skill set. I'm still working on that, but I feel like that could be totally like a class or a venture that I could do.
yeah, or even an Instagram live. I know this is your first one, but like maybe
Yes,
after this, you'll start doing
exactly.
little, yeah, Instagram live tutorials. So that's awesome. So as we kind of wrap up, do you want to talk about any upcoming projects or opportunities? I guess you mentioned earlier that folks can commission you, so for that larger piece, and then also for clothing, or what kind of other work are you available for commissions?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of now since I started doing the digital illustrations. If they want prints, I haven't people have asked me when they see the little prints for cards,
Mm.
actually, which is an interesting idea. It's just a matter of changing the paper. But that's something I could totally explore. As I say, I usually don't say no. I always have a tendency to say yes, and then I figure it out. So just don't be afraid to ask me for whatever, the piece may be. I'll try my best to get it done. And then very quickly to address your question in terms of some of the other things I wanted to share, I did pull a trigger. I launched my online website. And so now folks
Hooray.
can, to purchase artwork, paintings, prints. So you can go to dianacandelejo.shop. And it is now live. I haven't done a formal launch, but I was able to get it through and done.
That's
So folks can
exciting. I
check
actually
out.
didn't know that before we got on. I would have mentioned it. What do
Yeah,
you have
no.
on sale there?
So lots of prints, and actually a couple of my paintings are up there, but they're again very large paintings. But again, I can do small, but I prefer doing large. But again, that's something if folks want me to work on a commission piece, more than happy to do
It's like you're being drawn toward murals. Like the universe wants you to. That's where you're going to end up.
Yes.
Um, so, what's one message before we wrap? What's one message that you want to share with everyone who's tuning in, the NJ Pack family and other folks based in Newark? That's something that you want people to know.
Yeah, I think the message I have would be to now more than ever use your voice. And I don't mean that quite literally. It can mean, be manifested in different ways, whether that is doing artwork, whether that is, contributing to community meetings, vote, fill out your census. I mean, there's just a plethora of ways that you can act and have your voice recognized. So I would urge folks to do that, to use the power of your voice, because collectively we can make a difference. And so I just encourage folks to do so.
Well, that is a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us. This was so nice chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to let you go. Have a wonderful night. And I'll fill in. So tune in this time next week. We're going to be here next Tuesday at 6 p.m. We're going to be joined by chaplain and vegan entrepreneur Mira Abuelez. And be sure to follow us here on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Just stay on top of everything NJ Pack. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.